So this is the demo for Portrait Studio, and there's gonna be a lot of changes, but this is just the demo. There are still a lot of issues left with it, but we are going to have a full body. We are going to have a same control over the universal endpoint lights, or I think that's what they're called, yeah. And we're going to have a movable, posable body. The only issues that we're having currently is just basic bugs with being able to control so much. It comes with a lot of extra bugs. Like the more you do, the more you open the window for more issues. So we're still just trying to iron those out, which is why we've had such delays. But this is just so I can show you, to be completely transparent with you, that we are having these changes, that we are going to be updating it very soon, a very complete overhaul of all the features in Portrait Studio. But for those who have been asking about Mac and a Mac release, I think the Mac release is not going to happen for many reasons. Mac is not developer friendly. They want to mediate and facilitate every aspect of the production process. So, for the release process, so that if you want to throw your product on a store for Mac users, it has to be exported from a licensed Mac tool. It has to be, you have to pay all these kinds of licenses in order to sell on their market. They take a massive amount of what you make, so the total gross income from that product, they take like 30% of it or something like that. Um, which is unbelievable. This is ridiculous. I think Mac is reaching its cycle. I think it's basically expiring, which is why they've continued to make such terrible mistakes with their products. And I'm not sure that, as a small little company, or a small little production team that we are, I don't think that we should be catering to a failing industry, which is the Mac industry. They think they've cornered the market with their methods and their tools, but honestly, we get same performance and more for less with Windows. And Windows is very developer friendly. It's very open. It's very transparent. All their tools are designed so that you can customize and read the tool itself as a developer, and be able to access developer options, and be able to experiment with your tool without having to go through or jump through hoops and go through, or hurdles, major hurdles in release, just so that you could test the just being able to test in a Mac is impossible for us because of their rules. So that's why we've officially kind of made a decision that we will not be releasing for Mac at all, for Apple. We won't be releasing for them. I know I've told a lot of people that we will be, and in the summer, between probably May and July, we were getting so close to releasing for Mac, and then we find out that you're supposed to do a certain number of things in order to release, and these weren't things that we could do. They want you to sign over a lot of what you are as a small little business to them, and it's just not something that we're going to do. We mostly wanted to release it just as a full version for Mac users, for people who are using it, and then as well for as an app for the iPhone and the iPad. So we wanted to release a smaller, lighter version of Portrait Studio, even if it's just for bust use and lighting, basic lighting controls. It would still be really cool if you could have access to 3D models on your phone, which is something unprecedented, really. A lot of people don't have access to that. And Portrait Studio is supposed to bring the 3D modeling world to someone who doesn't necessarily want to waste time learning Maya or 3ds Max or ZBrush. So that was the point, simplicity, but Mac just adds on these unbelievable. They want to uh, they really want to capitalize as much as possible with every major choice, or every major movement or step forward in the production process. So that said, it is not illegal for me to propose my next little recommendation. Emulators are not illegal. Emulators are just another thing, another app that you can open in a Mac, in an Apple's any Apple software or iOS or whatever. You can get a hold of an emulator, a Windows that will run perfectly on your Mac. And I'm not going to link you anything. I'm not going to point anywhere to any link on the websites or something like that or on the internet. But if you search up uh, Microsoft or Windows emulator for Mac, you can purchase Windows Purchase Studio and run it on a Mac inside the emulator, and the emulator won't lag at all. The Apple emulator does lag on a Microsoft, and we can't release it because that's how we were trying to, but we can't release it unless we have a licensed Mac or an Apple device. But that's the only way really for you guys to have access to Portrait Studio and all the updates that are coming up. Is to find yourself an emulator and run Portrait Studio on the Microsoft Windows emulator. All right. um, yeah, virtual machines. Yes. So it's like an emulator. It's like it's a fake Microsoft Windows computer in your Mac that'll just run the Microsoft software, and you can pretty much own Portrait Studio if you're a Mac user. But I'm not linking anything. I'm not going to be pointing to anything. But it is called a virtual machine, a Microsoft Windows virtual machine. This will allow you to run Windows Portrait Studio via Mac. Yeah, exactly. So Mac is not developer friendly. That's the final verdict. We will not be catering to Mac users. I'm so sorry, but it's just an unbelievable. It's like it's a world of its own, and I think that this airtight development strategy that they're taking, this business model, is expiring very, very soon. A lot of people are going to wise up to the fact that this business model is not something that is, uh, uh, I guess it's not evolution friendly. It's not going to evolve along with. It's not malleable. It's not a it doesn't move along with development and the evolution of the personal computer the way Microsoft has been. Microsoft has gone through numerous versions, and some people use that against Microsoft developers. Oh, you went through Vista and Windows 7 and Windows 8 and Windows 10, and I think that's a good thing that they've been doing that. I think that's an amazing thing that they've been allowing themselves to change and evolve. And the more strict development is, the more privatized that it is, just like Apple. I think that is going to be the demise of Apple, to be quite honest with you. If I could like create like I don't know, like a prophecy on Mac, I think their time is nearly ended. Give them 10 more years, 5 more years, it doesn't really matter. But unless they start changing their attitude and become more developer friendly, they're going to have a difficult time. Uh, yeah, they're going to have a difficult time fitting into the way technology is evolving. It's not sustainable. Yeah. I'd like to know also if we'll be able to use the new Portrait Studio with a graphic tablet pen. Yes, that is also possible. You could use it in the old one, and this will be transferred into the new one. Yeah, if you currently are between Microsoft or Apple, please buy yourself a nice, big ass, equally expensive but 10 times more powerful Microsoft computer, or like a one that runs Microsoft, because you will it's just it is the wiser choice. And be a smart consumer. Don't be a fool. Don't go out getting confused by Mac and fooled by Mac. It's really it's I can't swear. I don't want to swear today at Mac, but all right. So this is what it's going to look like. These are just some of the changes that are going to be applied. Are going to have a full list of movable expressions, movable body. Eventually, we're still facing some hurdles there as well. It's still going to have the blend shapes for the face, so you're going to be able to generate different faces, unique faces for both male and female lighting, male and female bodies. You're going to have sharper lighting. We managed to find ways to make the lighting a little with higher resolution, and it's just going to be a really massive overhaul, a completely different change in the landscape that you know currently of Portrait Studio, but it's still going to offer the same services. But we're trying to be a little bit more compact, a little bit more user friendly with the UI. All right. So uh, go get PCs. Yes. All right, so let's begin today. I wanted to take a look at this alien fellow. We have a lot of stuff to look through today. And I just wanted to cover a little bit of everything. It's just one of those classes where we just cover a little bit of everything. It's not focused on anything individually, like anything specific. But this alien dude right here, it's very, very the expression, the anatomy, and the sculpting, the general sculpting of the anatomy in the face are all just lacking. They're almost not there. And the color as well is though it is alien, we still want to incorporate some organic structure to it. So he looks green. If I saw this guy, I say I saw a green alien. I wouldn't say I saw a pastel green yellow mix alien. I would say I saw a green alien. But you as the artist, you can't say, okay, well, she saw a green alien, I'm going to use a green pencil. No, you as the artist have to bring in the yellow and the brown in there as well. So just because someone describes something as green, you as the artist have to look past that and understand that there's a diversity, what greens are available to use, especially on organic objects. So if this is a living creature, it's not going to be as fluorescent, I mean, not fluorescent, it's not going to be as saturated a green as a leaf, which is like filled with chloroform, so that's the only reason why it's that green. And this is an organic object, and just like a leaf is, but it's a living object. It's a carbon-based life form that breathes and poops and all of that stuff. So we really want to just use a less green, so it's a little bit more friendly that way. I'm going to desaturate this as well. So he's still green, but it's not a pencil crayon green. It's not an unrealistic green. This is still a great green, which is why some people, when they paint like a realistic version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something, we're almost always getting that pastel green, that really ugly looking green that is typically what turtles are. They're not pure green. I'm going to raise the value just a little bit because you have a lot of brightness being reflected in the eyes, and this is saying that the room this alien is in is pretty light. So this just like single lab study with a gray background, character design setup, it has to be bright enough to justify the kind of highlights we're seeing on the face. One other thing that I'm reading off this character is that he is old. And I don't want to draw an old alien. When we want to draw an old alien, there's other. Remember, like in Dragon Ball Z, how the old Namek people, they still had the same old faces that human beings have, even though they were completely alien. So when we use these signatures, these age signatures, we're human beings. We project our image on other things. So instead of giving him those defined laugh lines that we see in older people, why not just give him the cheekbone definition and replace that kind of line influenced edge, that purely clean edge, with something a little bit more realistic or naturally occurring bump on the face. Okay. So I'm just lowering that. Alright. So all I'm doing is I'm just trying to create like a believable bump or a contour in this cheek instead of just that edge that you had before that seemed a little bit flat. That doesn't really occur naturally. So try to stay on topic, everyone. It's really important that you do. This is not a meet and greet right now. It's a classroom setting, so just because it's online doesn't mean we talk and talk. If this was a lecture hall, you'd all be very, very quiet. You'd pass notes around, yeah, but you'd be very quiet. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm just bringing in that extra little highlight in between the nose. You can stretch that laugh line all the way to the sides of the nose and just make it originate there, but the further we stretch it, the smaller our brush gets, the more that he'll read like an older person. Even now he's reading like an older person, but this is what I have to work with for this piece. I'm going to lower the darkness here. Another reason why he looks older, like an older alien, instead of just like a simple age, not coming in with any specific age group like a 30-year-old alien, is the distance between the mouth and the nose. That also adds another age unit. So you can go ahead and say all these alien races, they all look old. But again, we're creating these in our image. This is going to be made for a human audience. So that excuse doesn't fly here. What we have to do is remember that the audiences are human, and so they're going to read like everybody is old. So what if you had to design? What if you had to design like a baby alien? Would he also have an extensive distance between the nose and the mouth? No, we wouldn't do that. We would make the baby alien take on like remember District 9, the way they designed the alien baby, the son of that I forget his name. Amazing movie, but he still looked so cute because somehow, some way they reorganized the features so that they still reflected a human baby or a human child, but it was still very, very alien. So we create these creatures in our image. Alright. So I'm trying to give him that no specific age group, because if you come in with a specific age group, then we're not seeing the alien in its prime. And what we're trying to do when we create these creatures and make creature designs, we're exemplifying them in their highest performance. Not when they're old, not when they're young, just when they're in the exact age. There's a separation here between these two areas, so the nose doesn't seem to connect. And I'm just going to erase away. So there's nothing wrong with working with references. So if you just pick up like a good reference with a turtle, like a green turtle, use the exact color palette you find there, and it'll make sense. We will read it better because we've seen organisms that have this specific palette. So these shadows that I'm throwing in are just setting up a good base for the skeletal structure. And I'm just going to be interrupting that as I go. In areas that are naturally curved, or that they slowly taper off into the... So even though he's an alien, we can still see like a great deal of like a good balance between skeletal and flesh. Alright. So the brighter we go, the less saturated we're supposed to be. So the more the areas that are the most exposed to the light source should be closer to white than to pure green. The only areas that are supposed to be green are the midtones. That's how these colors work. So areas that are right in between the shadow and the highlight are the only areas that we saturate in, because the midtones are the friendliest for colors. All the best colors sit up here. All the weird colors sit in the whites and in the blacks. So the midtones are the best areas. So between the highlight and the midtone, between the highlight and the shadow, we throw the midtone. So right here. So I'm going to exaggerate it just so you can see. Highlight, midtone gets the most saturation, and then shadow. Alright. So unless he's made of rock or some sort of like drywall, he would have this much of a mattified skin. But because he's an alien, let's explore like a more reflective skin type that is a little less porous and hairy than human. The sides of the nose should also be just a little bit lighter. And it's a very, very human looking alien for a lot of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is this expression. This expression is constantly it's like a very curious expression. And we've also, yes, we want large eyes for an alien, but to have them so large is to pull from the baby face, which is very unsettling, which could be something you go for. But uncanny is never something we aim for. Uncanny happens when we fail at something. So he looks uncanny because it's a very human eye on a very inhuman surrounding. So it's familiar and unfamiliar at the same time, and that's the best formula to get uncanny. Something that's supposed to be human or looks familiar but is entirely mutated outside of that familiarity. So the large eyes before, we want to shrink them just a little. They're still humongous compared to human proportions, but we still want to shrink them. I would lengthen the face even further, because to enlarge the eyes is to bring them too close. So if we lengthen this, we're still bringing in another, like a very unhuman snout, something a little bit more snake-like. But if the snout is in perfect balance, or the human snout is in perfect balance between the eyes and stuff, and the nose is always just a nice placement with the ears, which whereas where it was before with you, then it's going to still look very human. So these are the areas that you can adjust that will make it look more alien. So how are you designing an alien creature if you don't know what makes a human? So it's like trying to explore one extreme without knowing the other end of the spectrum, the other end of the extremity. So we can enlarge the width of his mouth and make him look super creepy like they did when they designed the lizard professor from Spider-Man. The mouth was huge. It was from ear to ear. It was crazy and was very uncanny and very, very scary. But uncanny in a good way, I guess. And it was a human form, so it did come from a human before, and he turned into the lizard. The professor, what's his name? So if we look at it before, so you had that strange fold that looked like a gill on either side of his face. The eyes were a little bit large. You had that age signature happening. And then we're bringing that. And when I saturated it, it saturated into a yellow, not really a green. So you can bring in more green, but again, you can't bring it everywhere. You can slide it gently over to the green. We're barely in the greens and we're getting all this green already. Green is a very versatile color. So I'm just bringing that saturation, and only on the midtones, not everywhere. We don't want it to look monochromatic. We want to include the reflection of the atmosphere. The atmosphere has yellows and whites in it as well, and that green will shine in that yellow and white. I'm going to get like a yellow-white and just throw that over anywhere where the sun is reaching. It's just going to slowly look more and more realistic. As for the general design, so the exact things that you've made happen that are alien, so the type of eye, the type of ears, the type of face, I think you should try to explore the whole body as well. And I think what you've done here is you've jumped straight into you've jumped straight into the painting without sketching. If you sketch a little bit more, you'll actually have an interesting looking alien, like an actually explore something a little different, a different shape for the eyes, but everything here seems very basic. Basic geometries are used here right now. Basic shapes, and there's a different kind of silhouette. So the silhouette itself, if we just take a look at it, seems a little bit boring, right? This is a very, very basic silhouette. And if we look at the way they designed Paul, the alien from that movie, same exact silhouette here, very, very basic alien shape. But they did humanize his face just a little bit and make him a little bit more friendly to the eyes. So Paul movie images. So he looks very, very pretty for an alien, but they got rid of the nose. The mouth is really wide, and the rest of the body is very similar to the way you drew it here. Okay, but very, very wide ear to ear, and there's only so much you could do. Lizard Professor Spider-Man. I don't know what his name is. Images. Where is he? Right here. Very, very massive smile range. So I think this is the exact design. Yeah. And when he smiled, it just creeped me the hell out. It was very, very uncanny. But again, in a good way. Everything else was really, really set up to look very human. So really what you're supposed to be doing is exploring the kind of alien on the sketch phase, and when you render, just remember all the basics you're supposed to be exploring as well. So when you're basics of sculpting and light and where to saturate and where not to saturate, the anatomy involved in the kind of green that you choose. So there's anatomy even there in the color choice. The reflectivity, what is he made of? Is it scales? Is it actual porous skin like we have? Is it a kind of film? Is it anything else that we see? And the expression there is also like a little bit Just a little bit out there. It's kind of just giving us a very, very defined human expression. And again, we see things in our image, so we start to read this guy is always just a little bit surprised. But here he looks concentrated. Not angry, just concentrated. And when I say when you explore it in the sketch stage, what I really mean is what we're doing is something like this. So we really round off the rest of the face. They are not dependent on speech, so that's why it's underdeveloped, but they are very dependent on their thinking, so their brains are very, very, very oversized. They're very smart. And this is very, very similar to the way we design elves. They're very cunning, but they don't speak very much. Their mouth is made to be very small. Okay. Something a little bit less human, a little bit more mutated. Okay. But you're exploring a very, very basic design for aliens. And again, take it into a sketch stage so you can bring something a little bit more unique. And this is the kind of stuff they love to see in character design. Stuff like this where it's a little bit more realistic, a little bit more believable. Something applicable in movies. And these super greens, they don't read very well in cinema. They don't read very well in games. You know, that crayon green. They read very well in animated shows and stuff like that, but that's not what we're going for. So I'm bringing in a little bit more. I mean, if you are going for that, it's very 2D cell shading, and that's when we use those primary greens, those really basic shades. But like when I'm looking at a puffy eyes right here, like I know what puffy eyes do when I look at them, so maybe he does have puffy eyes. If he has anything that blinks or like an extra layer of blinking, maybe that's like an extra layer of eyelid that can blink from side to side. Maybe I can just show where that is. So it's like a vertical blink like cats have. Just like that. Let me, forgot to do a new layer. Okay, what else would I change? I would make the eyes, since they're so large, eyesight must be unbelievably strong. So these things are like satellites. They don't just capture, look, they see stuff. They see stuff we don't see. They probably see colors we don't see. So you could look at that clown crab. What's that crab called that can see everything? All the colors. So you can look at that crab and see how his design was made, and so we can probably start to introduce another layer of lens and another lens. So he doesn't just have one lens, he has two. So let's see what I can do with that. So thinking scientifically is always a plus. Is always someone, I would look for, if I was an employer, I would look for that in my employees. If I was hiring someone for a studio or someone to help, I would probably find another way to, I would look for someone to find another way to make something seem logical, to bring the science in and explain and rationalize why we chose these specific design aspects here. Probably captures a lot more light in its eyes than we think. Probably has that nocturnal shade happening in the inner part of the pupil. Something a little like that. Its eyes are always open, very unsettling. It's got really big eyes, so I'm sure it's got waterline. It's got a waterline in there somewhere. So, apart from, these are very, very quick changes, I'm sorry, they're very, very bad, they're very rough changes, but I'll probably do half and half, so half the lens is like in that reflective, and then bring some more color in. So the color of the eyes are these kinds of aliens. Like, do they have a variety of eye color, or is it a fixed, perfect color? Is there even color? Is the whole thing a lens? And to make the eyes feel more watery, so I'm sure they are water-based, or else really how would they see? All creatures are water-based as we know them in the world. They have some kind of water in their construction. So we can bring in that inner fleshy color, or maybe a super saturated green that's on the inside, so our insides look pink Their insides could look like some sort of mucky color or just a pure green. And again, we're adding another layer of anatomy this way. Right, so this is how you make something look realistic, by finding references where that kind of have what you're going for. So looking at a turtle's eyes, and then a lizard's eyes, and then looking at the way that crab's eyes are, which is like basically it's like a honeycomb pattern. Are these humanoids? Are these like very, very similar, like distant cousins of the human? Looking at the way chimpanzee's silhouette looks like, so maybe something like that. You could take a look at that and try to apply that in there. And then finally, what we do to add that next level of realism is we bring in the grayscale all around the object, and we bring that grayscale in all the highlights. So yes, we do have to bring in the color of the grayscale in a character design environment. We just reflect just a little bit for those extra secondary light sources. So you explored a very, very basic, dare I say, boring alien design. And so before you get into all this, making it all look realistic and finding references, you have to find a good design. But you also can't render it the first time you try it. The first version, you can't render it all the way. So try some silhouettes. If the silhouettes read well, go into fleshing it out with some sketch lines. If those read well, then choose your final design and then look for references. If you find a good amount of references, then you go into the final rendering stage. So you're going to have a reference for these kinds of scales, you're going to have a reference for these kinds of eyes, etc., etc. And that's kind of the format you guys are supposed to be following for the creature design challenge for this month. Alright, so these are all the things that I would do in order to create a more successful like alien painting. I don't go in straight away into rendering and skip silhouettes and skip sketches and skip referencing. That's like the best way to ensure you're going to fail. And I'm not sure why so many of you do that. If you already know that it's successful, that the road is going to be way more successful if you take these specific stages, why even bother going in and freehanding it? It's just because the pros freehand sometimes doesn't mean that we can. We don't have enough knowledge, and in our vertebrae yet as the artists, we're not fully developed so that we can think we can pull off these kinds of choices like the pros do, and without sketching go in and render something fully. That's the best way to sabotage your painting. So I'm going to just bring in more of that gray over here. It's very symmetrical as well, but the body's asymmetrical, so it feels like it's a character design setup, but it also doesn't feel, it feels like a portrait, like a glamour shot for the alien. So if you're going to make the head so perfectly symmetrical and it's a character design lineup, it's like a study of the character so that you can send it off to a modeler or something. Make the bust, the shoulders, and the chest also symmetrical. So that's another thing. Presentation was also another thing that you skipped, that you had issues with. So I would probably lead that into right here. Lead that to be a little bit more wet, I guess. The eyes are so huge. I'm sure the tear ducts are massive. So can anyone summarize all the changes that I made today for this alien? Summarize why I made these changes. Alright. I heard a good quote recently that a good design is something that you have to search for. That's very, very, very good, Antares. It's exactly what it is. It doesn't just come to you. You really have to go out and look for it. And that's the effort. I mean, without great achievement comes with an effort behind it, like a backdrop of effort. These massive eyes, I'm sure they need a great amount of shadow to protect them. So these eyes are very, very large. I'm sure that they are very sensitive to excessive light. And if they aren't sensitive to light, it means they don't use light. There's no way for an object to develop, an organism to develop while being completely immune to the power of like the sunlight. We borrow from the sunlight to see, but we also can't borrow its entirety. So these massive brow bones here are here because the eye needs some shading to it. So throwing in this extra little shading, it makes sense to add it for this guy here because he needs that shade, or else his eyes would explode right out of his head. His eyes are very, very large. And then we have some basic shadows here. I would rethink the placement of the mouth. Like, remember that weird little mutation I did, or that change in the liquify? So that feels like he's more involved with the light source around him if we cast this massive shadow off the brow bones. Right? Actually, I would give a little bump here, because that brow bone. So before, after. And ever so slowly, things start to make a little bit more sense. That's really how you pull off realistic. You take it in stages. If you try to do too much at once. Right now I'm sharpening only where there is light, because only light can reveal this much detail. You don't go and sharpen everywhere. Don't sharpen and throw texture everywhere you think that, where there's skin, there's texture. No. Light is needed in order to reveal that kind of texture. These are very, very quick changes we made today, and they're such a drastic change. And for a production company or whatever, this is just enough. This is as much as they want and more. So if you just organize your production process just a little bit, I think you'll be able to pull off these exact changes. And if you wanted to access this saturation just a little bit and change the palette, that's fine too, but as long as you stay in a very, very friendly color environment that actually works from the green. So this is a less saturated, not green everywhere kind of deal here. Light is needed in order to reveal the texture. Added some shadows to make the character more alive, though, about how the eyes affect the character and how the character would adapt the light to light and such. Yes. Light is bae. Love light. Yes. Light is the reason why we see pretty much everything. I still think this amount of green is very cheesy. So I would shift it back toward that really believable, fleshy green. Which still reads as a green guy. If you were to say if this is a green alien or a purple alien, if you ask a kid, he'll tell you it's a green alien. Kids don't mess around. They just answer straight. They don't fuck around. If they tell you if something tastes like shit, they'll tell you it tastes like shit if they were allowed to swear. If children were allowed to swear, they'd tell you this tastes like shit, Mom. Get this out of my face. Okay, so you made the features less human-like. Change the pastel green to a yellow, more diluted green skin tone. Yes, exactly. Use a shitload of references. Exactly. Avoid the uncanny. Make it look more organic and real. Yes, Naomi, thank you. Change the colors to be more realistic and less cartoony. Adjusted facial features to be less uncanny valley. Remove some human age factors to make it read less old. Yes. So if you wanted him to read less old, you just have to look at like old Namek. I don't know how to spell it. DBZ. Images like how do you spell Namek? Namek. Yeah, so this old fella right here. He looks like any other fat American. And this one right here also looks like a very old person. But if we look at Piccolo didn't have those laugh lines, did he? No, because he was a young 30-year-old hunk. Alright? So, a green hunk. So, cartooning, whatever it is, these age signatures travel eons, and age groups. I mean, they travel, these defining differences between age groups travel across languages and culture. They are this unified design canon and how to create something, make something look old, because we're all human essentially. Between languages and ages and races, we all age in the exact same way. Gravity does the same old business to our faces since the dawn of time. Alright, so that's why if we're creating something, we're creating it in our image, we can't use these age signatures and just say, oh, well, that's how they look over there. No, that's not how they look over there. That's how we look over here, and we are the viewers of this. Alright, so I'm going to shut this down and send this back. If you want this sent back to you, just let me know. This asteroid demon that's fallen here, this is a light source situation that is a silhouette. So this light source here needs to be, this whole rock structure needs to be much darker. Probably should have lassoed. Alright, so after we darken that, all that lava, all that crazy lava, glows. So I'm just taking away some of this. Sorry, one sec. Okay. So if this is much darker, then it explains that this beautiful light source that's behind this object has cast the shadow in our direction. That's why it's a light source, like an eclipse. I mean, that's why it's a shadow. That's why it's a silhouette, like an eclipse. An eclipse is a silhouette of the shape of the moon in front of the sun. That's a solar eclipse. Alright, so I might have to double that as well. Just a little bit more. So this is how bright you were before, which makes no sense at all. It's not possible. Unless light doesn't cast shadows. And if light didn't cast shadows, then we wouldn't be here today. So what I'm doing now is I'm creating like a hot spot for the light that distorts the edges of anything it moves through. And this glow moves upward. And now it feels hot. It feels like it's hot. And then I'm going to throw that exact glow over everything else that is on the outside. Maybe I'll use like a color dodge. Yep. And this character here is a light source as well, so she needs her own color dodge. Her own just amount of attention. And then these random kind of like hot spots in the ring around her also need a little bit of a glow, because everything seems to be made of fire. This is a creature of fire descended from the sky. You know how it goes. And then everywhere that is not touched by the light source, everything that is the background, you get that blue. And that's how you keep this nice palette working. So, that said, now that we've balanced the color and made the light source look like it's a light source, the composition is way too symmetrical. The camera is just, the framing is really boring. If I was a photographer, or if I was the cameraman in a movie or the director of a movie, I would not frame it like this. If I want to make her look colossal, like a danger that has just emerged, first I'd show some real damage made to the environment. So I'd look up some real good references for, you know, asteroid damage or debris after an explosion or a fallout or something like that, what happens after a nuclear explosion over time or something like that. And then I would frame it so that we are in a worm's eye view. The cameraman is smaller than she is. I would not level the cameraman with her. She just looks like she's on the other end of the Yu-Gi-Oh, what's it called? The court, you know, the the dueling stage. Okay, she doesn't look like she's very scary. So I want the audience to feel scared. I want to move them, and amazing angles and perspective, worm's eye or bird's eye, really moves the audience. Actually moves them, makes them either smaller or way up in the sky. So that's another change I would make. So it's always the same mantra. You have to plan your compositions. You have to make an effort to plan them. How do you plan them if you don't have the vocabulary to plan? So that's why we have to explore different schools of thought. Watch a documentary or two about framing. You know, what happened in film noir, what happened in modern, more modern renditions of Colossus. So all the Transformers movies, watch them and see how they pull off that feeling that all these creatures, these crazy beings, are so much bigger than everyone else. There's always some kind of really low angle camera. Everything is so zoomed up because they're so big they can't fit in the camera. So it's low angle and they're huge. They fill up the canvas, especially when they're transforming because they don't know how to make sense of all those mechanics. They zoom up really close. But yeah, these are all the changes that I recommend for this. Alright, so I'm just waiting for Photoshop to wake up. Come on, Photoshop. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. I believe in you. Thank you. Alright. So this sandy beach drawing, I'm having just a little bit like a hard time believing this sandy sand. And I think it's because the sand typically is white in a beach like this. It's white, okay, because there's all this blue, so it's canceling out a lot of that yellow you have in here. And it's not just white. When that yellow of the sand goes through the blue, and then the blue of the sky reflected on the water, what happens is that we get this green aqua color in anywhere that's shallow. Right? So this happens all the way over there as well. So these tiny little and then you frame the canvas, but you've darkened the sand. This is not right. The sand doesn't darken like this. Sand is pure white. It's a purely lit environment. Why is the sand darkened? I know you're framing, but this is excessive framing. You've canceled out the value that this sand lives in completely. You've canceled it out. You've made the sand look like it's wet on one side, which makes no sense. So I'm just going to get rid of that excessive framing you have here. The water and the atmosphere kind of work together to blur the edge of the water, so this whole edge over here. Oh, let's see, be quiet. No. Damn it. Oh, let's see, shut up. Okay, so this edge right here gets completely blurred because the water line and the sky line kind of melt together. Alright. And then the edge of the water, so the edge right where the sky starts, that's where we get that really intense highlight on that side. And then finally, where we can darken is just on the areas where the sand has been wet and has been made wet by the probably use burn tool on highlights because that won't add any new colors. So we're just, whoa, holy shit. We're just darkening just a little bit. And I'm just going to correct these colors here. Oops. So this all needs to be super desaturated. And this water, this very light, shallow film of the sand, it starts to feel transparent, doesn't it? It feels like you can actually walk in here. Alright. So a little less yellow, a little bit more white, just to make this atmosphere united. Unite this atmosphere under the same colored film that is the color of the atmosphere, which is the color of the air, which is the blue. Alright, so these are, again, sciences. So you just, watch some documentaries, man. Everyone asks me where I learn all this science. It's just documentaries. You're just literally just watching it happen. They explain, why is the sky blue? Basic sciences. Maybe pay attention in science class. Alright? But all of these things help you guys discover. They're going to be useful for you one day. It's not just BS. It's all for a good reason. That's if you want to recreate a world of your own and paint a landscape. You have to follow all these rules. So, before, after. That sand was pure yellow. It's not supposed to be that yellow. The film of the atmosphere is blue. The yellow goes through that blue. The green in that blue cancels out all that yellow. They just don't blend very well, yellow and blue. They're not complementary, but they don't blend very well. Pay attention in science class, yes. Looks like concept art from Moena. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Alright. This one is the same artist, and this feels like a blue rock instead of water. And that's because water has a specific but specular potential. which is, it can get really, really bright and can reflect the exact nature of the light source that's shining on it. It's like a mirror. So just bringing in some white, raising the highlights here, possibly bringing in some green wherever the light source shone through the wave, so we have that subsurface scattering here. Oops. So through every wave, there's probably going to be like a little bit of that subsurface scattering, and that's the yellow of the light source going through the blue of the water, creating that green product. And then we have a little bit of burn, so just a little bit of burning on the shadows. I mean, this feels a little bit more watery, but still it's so grainy. And I think water is a little bit more oily than what you've made it here. So this is very, very grainy texture, and we need to see a little bit more of that blended, almost over blended, mirror-like smoothness, even though it's like a melted mirror. Basically, water is a melted mirror. Write that back to me. Alright. So these changes are very small. I'm trying to save time. But it really looked like it was just blue rock or blue sand. If we took the blue out and replaced it with like this color right here, it would probably look like a Sahara or something. A Sahara color. Like it just looks like a... If I got the blue back, it just looks like a desert, doesn't it? So just remember, water has a different specular behavior. It has a mirror-like nature to it. It's not mattified like rock can be. And yeah, those are some really, really massive texture study issues. You need to grayscale, find a water reference, grayscale that, drag it onto the canvas, and study the nature of the water as a texture. That's called a texture study. It's like very similar to form studies, you just study the texture. This one is, I'm not going to do a paint over, but I'm just going to show you that if you were going for that nostalgic, sad ghost, she's looking directly at the canvas, at the camera. She's perfectly aligned with the canvas. Symmetry is like a holy contentedness. It's like very, very content. I don't even know if that's a word. Like, it's very content. So when we have that, we're not really showing the unsettled haunting that you're trying to portray with this character. So if she looked away from the canvas, if she was looking away and her eyebrows were a little less caricatures and more, like a caricature sadness versus like a real, you have to work to read to see that sadness in her. Just like that. Maybe a little bit of anger in one eyebrow, but a little bit of curiosity in another, and then you'll have the mix of those two. Her lips are almost smiling, so I would just completely get rid of any emotion in her lips. We don't really know when our eyebrows are emoting anything, but we can tell when our lips are expressing something. So that's what we can control, and we stop it, but sometimes we don't know that we are looking in a certain mood because our eyebrows are doing something else. At least that's with me. My eyebrows are very expressive. And that, along with like a changed camera angle and framing, and I think you'll get the read that you want. But before, she was just like kind of grossed out. It was like a very modern expression, like, hello, like, this is, I didn't tag you on my Instagram, so don't comment, or some shit. I don't know what girls say. God, fuck them all. But if you wanted that sad, haunting face, that full of regret and full of hatred, you probably want to go for something that doesn't look at the canvas. And you want to know the expression you're going for. You don't want to accidentally make the expression happen. You want it to be a real expression. something a little bit more natural. So I did end up painting over it. I'm sorry. I can't explain without painting over. And then the eyebrows, please try to unify them with the shadow of the eye socket. They are extremely separated. They were just completely above it. Okay, and the sides of the nose don't get this much shadow on them. Alright. Yeah, more like a, I'm not sure if you're talking to me, more like a study. I think I like the way this is plain. There's nothing happening here on her headdress. I like that. I like that it's zero rendering background color that you started with. A lot of the masters did that when they got bored and they just left it, but we still see it as like a masterpiece, even though it's unfinished. Sometimes that just looks good. This piece, just a quick note on this one. I've been trying to get to this one. This cheek here, you're telling me this cheek right here, this line, is that she doesn't have a chubby cheek. Alright, so either you go for this cheek or you go for this one, where you don't have that, where you create the gradient that you're representing as a cross section on the other side. So one of them you suggested the bone structure is sharp, but didn't do it on the other side, so we balanced both. You just have to decide on which one you're choosing. That's one of the issues in this painting. The nose has no volume. It's very flat. But that's it for today. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope that very, very soon Portrait Studio will be released. Its update, the newest update will be released. The price is going to go up as soon as that update comes out. So I recommend that if you are interested in purchasing it, if you're waiting for the holidays or something like that, it might be a little bit too late because the price is going to go up. You're still going to get the update for free. The only thing is that if you get it too late, you won't be getting it. You have to pay more for it for the same amount if you got it now. Not for the same, what am I saying? I'm saying that if you buy it now, you pay less than if you buy it in a month. But that's it for today. Thank you everyone for watching. If you guys are interested in following my channel, just go to istebrak.com. And to upload images for me to critique, you just have to go to the Google community and join and then submit. And the Create Your Design Challenge, your final submission should be one drawing or painting. Please don't upload 3 or something. Out of the 3, you're supposed to choose one that you fully render or fully sketch thoroughly. If you sketch it thoroughly in clean sketches as we saw in the past 2 challenges. To upload 14-day challenges, you just simply have to upload it on the Google community, but to upload themes, you have to make sure it's under the theme submissions category. Please go to YouTube and like and subscribe. And someone told me that the reason why some of you aren't getting notified is because, thank you Emily Duik, but I think the viewers need to click on the alarm bell beside the subscribe button and check the box that says send me all notifications for this channel. Thank you for this answer, by the way, but I think that's why some of you aren't being notified that I'm live. So a lot of you have said that I go live and you're not notified, or you don't get the alarm or something like that. Try that method. If that doesn't work, I think you have to drop 1 like on any of my videos. It's not random. I'm not asking for likes either. I get enough of them, thank you. But if you have to drop 1 like, if you haven't liked a video on YouTube, YouTube's whatever algorithm, whatever that suggests stuff to you that in that category isn't told to keep suggesting stuff in that category. So if you like cooking channels, if you actually like them, you'll be given more of those. More will be suggested to you, along with alarms and notifications on video uploads and people who you've subscribed to, etc. If you've turned off all subscriber notifications, that's another thing, another reason why you possibly aren't getting any notifications for your subscriptions. But those are the only answers I have. I hope those help for those who haven't been notified. If you want your paint overs back, just message me on Facebook. I'll be able to give them back to you there. Follow me on Twitter for announcements, and I upload my sketches and whatnot and studies on Instagram. But thank you everyone for watching today. Have a great day, guys. Bye bye.